Welcome to today's episode of the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. Apple TV and Seth Rogen have teamed up once again, platonically, this time without Rose Byrne, to produce a satirical comedy looking behind the scenes at studio heads and producers. It's Friday, March 28th, 2025. This cast is huge. And you also have a ton of cameos, but there's Seth Rogen, Catherine O'Hara, Ike Barinholtz, Chase Sweet Wonders, who I just know from Bodies, 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 Catherine Hahn, of course, from Disney. Like, it's just Bryan Cranston, David Krumholtz, all the cameos in the world.
It has the most amount of cameos in a pilot that I've seen in quite some time, possibly ever.
It feels like because of the Seth Rogen-ness of it, he's able to just use his entire cell phone. He has it at his disposal. He can call whoever he wants, and he gets them on board. It's unfair. I feel like it's unfair that he's able to do that. He probably didn't even have to pay them. I'm kidding. It's Apple money, so they probably paid them a lot of dough.
Well, it's everyone that is in this he's worked with before. I mean, you said already that Charlize Theron.
Except for Scorsese.
He worked in 2018. Scorsese was the most surprising to see because the only thing I've ever seen him in, he was also playing himself, was like Curb Your Enthusiasm for 2 episodes.
Right, but the thing that pissed me off was that I remember in Sam Mendes' The Franchise, which got canceled, it was a good show, but it wasn't as good as I thought it would be. Part of the reason was because it would mention like, oh, we're going to get Christopher Nolan and Tom Cruise in here, and then you would see them far off, and you clearly would not be.
That was like
the
people. 4th episode, I think.
Okay, let's name episodes. But in this, they could actually pull those people, and you wouldn't know up until that moment. So we're only going to talk about these first 2 episodes, but there are a lot of people who've named people who show up later on in the reviews who I won't even talk about because I don't want to ruin it for you. Did you like the show?
I mean, yeah, I think, but I didn't like it as much as I was hoping to.
Really?
Yeah, because it reminded me of a lot of different things. First off, Running Point, created by Ike Barinholtz. The most obvious was The Franchise, as we kind of said, the same basic premise.
Why did it remind you of those things, though? The Running Point is about a basketball.
Yeah, but the same type of comedy, if you remember, that had also a lot of cameos in it as well.
And she becomes the head of the basketball team. I'm starting to get it. So Matt Remick is this newly appointed head of Continental Studios.
Right.
There's an actual Continental Studios. It has nothing to do with the TV show. It's in New York. It's in Queens, and they do portraits, if anybody's interested.
It also reminded me of The Offer and Los Fantasmas. Los Fantasmas mostly because of the Paul Dano and Steve Buscemi connection, but I feel like The Offer mostly because it was just also based on movies as well.
I also think that they have someone else in this cast. I don't know who it was that I was clicking on is also in Los Fantasmas, as you're talking about. But yeah, if you want to ruin it for yourself, go to the Studio TV series Wikipedia site and just go to the guest stars, and it goes on for a while.
Seriously, how many people from the Disaster Artists are in it? I mean, you have Bryan Cranston, Seth Rogen, Ike Barinholtz. I assume that there's going to be more cameos from those people.
Okay, I'm going to ruin one cameo for you because I think that so they get the guy who this is on Apple.
Yeah.
And they have one of the Netflix highest guys up there. One of, if not the guy who makes all the TV for Netflix. He's like the Kevin Feige of Netflix. They get him to come on to the Apple show and make fun of himself by playing a version of himself. How weird is that?
It's just, well,
it's
again,
late night shows where they were bringing people across network to kind of team up, like Jimmy Kimmel and Conan and stuff.
It's Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's episodes where you get people to play themselves. Also Entourage as well. Elements of Tropic Thunder, I thought.
There's Barry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it kind of where it's always just looking at the industry with a bit of a cynical vibe? But in this case, everybody's supposed to hate producers. That's what producers are there for. They come in there and they sanitize movies and they make them more for wider audiences, which usually just means we're going to cut a lot of the creativity out. We're going to play it safe. We're not going to let the directors or the actors really show their full potential, And that's what Matt wants to change. Seth Rogen's character, he sneaks in there by saying, yeah, I'm just going to toe the line exactly like you want me to, Bryan Cranston. By the way, Bryan Cranston's character, who's based a little bit off the guy from The Offer, Bob Evans. They call him Discount Bob Evans. He's actually his name in the show is Griffin Mill. And Griffin Mill is the main character's name in The Player, who Tim Robbins played back in 92, which was a satirical black comedy that also poked fun at the industry. So they were using that character as if he had transcended Hollywood and continued along his way.
Wait, so it's supposed to be the same character?
Yeah, because it links right to him on the Wikipedia page. Anyways, so there's a lot going into this show. I give Seth Rogen a lot of props for that. I know that his writing partner, Evan, what's his face?
Evan Goldberg, right?
Yes, Goldberg, was also part of this, and, they had this meeting in 2000 where a studio exec basically said, "I feel like it's my job to ruin movies even though I love movies."
Because of the notes he gives or things like that?
I guess because at that time they were trying to pitch Superbad, but this was like a version of like a Roman, like back in the past. If you want to listen to Seth Rogen's NPR interview, he goes into it in detail.
Well, it's funny because you just said that Matt Remick is trying to be kind of a different type of producer, and if you remember in Superbad, Bill Hader and Seth Rogen are supposed to be, they're supposed to be, like, nice and make loving because they wanna change the perception of how, teenagers view cops, so it's
Yeah.
kinda like the same, goal that they're going for.
I mean, I feel like if you look at Superbad today, what their argument is it couldn't be made the same way today.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is because studios are so protective with what they do, and you really need to get someone who has either the money or the fame before they'll even allow for them to do something different, right? Either
Right.
that or you have to go super independent. In a way, also Matt Remick's character seemed like he wants to work for A24. Right? Where it would, if he was doing that, he would be happy with the films he's making. He has strung himself with the devil's bargain. He's the head of the studio now. All these people are nipping at his heels and telling him he has to do things a certain way. He has this IP for the Kool-Aid Man, right?
Yep.
I don't want to ruin like, you give the synopsis.
Yeah, okay, so Matt Remick, the new head of Cottonelle Studios, greenlights a $250 million Kool-Aid movie after he's kind of given the company, or at least the responsibility, by Griffin Mill, who we've talked about. And he's trying to go around. He has a couple ideas. There's one person, I forgot who's the person that ends up producing like the movie that they go with, because his plot is that
The producer is Patty Lay because he actually goes and hires his ex-boss.
yes, but I meant the screenwriter that is penning the Kool-Aid movie.
Are you talking about the Captain Underpants dude?
Yeah, right.
Okay, yeah, just call him the Captain Underpants guy. Basically, that's what David Krumholtz's character does. He's the Agent Ari in this universe. He's like, you're not going to get Guillermo del Toro. You're not going to get some big-time director. They're not going to want a piece of the Kool-Aid Man. And so they get the Captain Underpants guy who's also done, like, Storks. And this is a movie that you would expect to be like Pixels or like any one of those Angry Birds, that
Right,
type of movie.
especially.
And so it's going to be set to bomb, but maybe still make money overseas or internationally and walk away with a good amount. So in the end, Matt ends up having to go with that vision, and they need to rehire the Captain Underpants dude. But what are we getting at here? So that's just the life of a studio manager? Like, is that what we're led to believe, or do you have some hope that Matt's going to be able to change the industry from inside?
I thought that it was really just going to be about the Kool-Aid movie for the next 10 episodes. I think it's 10 episodes, right? And I thought that was going to be the main plot, but it seems like we're going to be following different productions.
It is 10 episodes.
Yeah, but it seems like we're going to be following different productions in the show. I thought that it was funny how they ended up buying Scorsese's script for $10 million.
Just to shelve it.
Right, just to shelve it. And it was Scorsese's swan song, as Steve Buscemi
We've
says.
seen a lot of that in the last few years from the Wile E. Coyote movie or the Acme movie, the
I still have hope that comes out.
Batwoman movie, and not necessarily because they were supposed to be terrific and they got shelved just for insurance money, but like even Cabin in the Woods back in the day had disappeared for several years before it finally
was actually released.
was freed.
Yeah.
So production studios are so interesting because to me, if you look at the top producers of all time, obviously you've got Feige with Marvel, and then you've got people like who've done the Harry Potter industry and
Bob Iger,
James Cameron. It seems like if you make enough money in Hollywood, then you can just self-finance,
Yeah.
But very few people, a lot of people have their own production studios. Very few people just completely produce a film by themselves, if that makes sense. Like, even though Kaylee Cuoco has that Norman thing, she's not going to make a movie without Warner Bros. She would
Right.
attach her production studio to Warner Bros. Studio, and they would like together make one. But it's weird how like even the actors are afraid of putting their money where their mouth is and investing hundreds of millions of dollars, even if they might have it at their disposal.
I think it's because self-funding is just such a big risk.
Well, they also talk about how a lot of movies lose money over time. Like even the studios don't necessarily make money even the ones that are trying to be all sneaky about it.
Yeah, so what do you think of the lingo? What do you think of, like, when it actually got down to talk? Because I thought that the most that showed what knew what it was talking about was when Seth Rogen tried to get Patty to sign on, and they started talking, like, pure studio talk, picture deals, exclusive payments, and
The
everything
walk and
else.
talk,
Yeah.
I thought that they did a really good job with it. It seems very Sorkin-esque, but it seems very commonplace nowadays. Just like the oneer in the second
Mhm.
episode where it's like everybody's doing it. It feels like you have to be a fast-paced show. But for a comedy, I think it was funnier than the franchise was.
I agree. Yeah.
I think that they were very different shows, but I because that just followed one specific franchise, and then this is just like all of Hollywood in general.
It was also made by people that obviously love Hollywood. Like,
Right, especially yeah, Seth Rogen.
I like the cool title cards. It was very reminiscent of Quentin Tarantino movies where he goes with, like, the old-timey intro.
Yeah, 70s color palette is how they put it, the culture of the studio, almost like they're trying to appeal back to The Offer.
Mhm.
And they're not quite there. In a way, though, the one of the very few negative reviews was that it's got lazy contrivances, hoary tropes that feel well beneath this high stylistic ambition of the series. When you talk about high stylistic ambition, I look at Winning Time and I remember how there were a few negative reviews for that same purpose. They're like, this looks really, really fancy for something that then is just making fun
Right.
of certain things about the Lakers. In the same regard here. That said, if you just take a comedy from like a sitcom, like The Pits or something from the early 2000s, and you compare it to this is like a masterclass. This is really, really good. So I think when people talk about how comedies aren't the same anymore and they're way worse, I don't think that's fair. I don't even think if the people in this production say that they're trying to bring it back to a certain degree. Television has certainly improved, I think, and this is even if I wouldn't give it the highest review for a comedy, I still think it's well worth watching.
I think, yeah, no, the thing about the series, and this kind of transitions a little bit into my cons, is that it's done its job in me wanting to watch a couple more episodes, but there's nothing about it yet. I guess this is where I kind of disagree with you, that, like, has grasped me into wanting to watch the full series. I feel like it hasn't gotten enough, it hasn't gotten, like, its claws deep enough
I
into
don't, but it's
anything.
need to is not what my thing is like. Every episode I've watched, I've been thoroughly entertained by, especially with the cameos, especially with the fact that you can tell they invested a lot into this series. It feels complete, and I get what you're saying, but I don't think it might just be like overkill with the amount of television we watch nowadays.
I
Where
think so. Yeah, no,
I
I
don't
definitely
like
agree with
if we
that.
had watched this and we weren't doing this podcast, this would definitely, I think, probably appeal more to you as far as like I want to tune in every single week.
Yeah, but I think that also, like, the second episode, well, what'd you think of that? Because I like the first episode more than I did the second episode.
Right, but I was kind of expecting to not like the second episode as much. A, it was shorter.
Right,
And
so the first episode's 42 minutes and the second's, like,
the
25.
second one is called The Oneer, and the big deal is that it's not only is it about a one-shot take that this real life director is doing, and it was a really famous person. Greta is in like the Past Lives movie, like she's a famous actress as well. They get famous people everywhere, but yeah, but it's also performed as a one-shot take. It's impressive, but right after seeing Adolescence, where it was like necessary
Right,
for that show.
I wish I had seen, this first before I watched Adolescence, because I felt like I was less impressed this
Yeah,
time around.
because that one they had to do rehearsal after rehearsal, and then they would do the take 10 times and they would just go with the best one. It was like that. They needed that for the drama of that series.
uh
While this was just poking fun at the fact that they could do it. And then almost pretentiously, they were like, this is how much a Rolling Stones song is going to cost. And then at the end, they play, You Can't Always Get
Can't
What You
always get what
Want.
you want, yeah.
And so it's again with like Seth Rogen pulling out his phone book, I feel like he had whoever he wanted at his disposal. And if he didn't, and this is just one of those spontaneous things that happen, then again, that's really spectacular for this type of series. I don't think for like anyone who you'd have to be really cynical not to like the series for just what it's able to accomplish because 85% of this stuff is supposed to have happened in real life. They did interviews with with other producers. They've dealt with this their entire careers, and so they were actually, and a lot of it's supposed to be based on like Sony and how the leak 10 years ago, how Amy Pascal, her career like kind of treaded water for quite some time. She got fired after some of those emails came out, and then now she's leading up the freaking Bond franchise. She's taking that over with the guy who does Paddington. So like careers in Hollywood, man, especially for producers, they don't tend to get canceled unless they do something purely illegal.
With you saying 85% of this actually happened, I wonder,
Right.
especially with just how ridiculous the second episode gets, where Matt just starts like ruining the whole production. I'm wondering, obviously they exaggerated that, but how much of that is real?
Right. Another one of the negatives I read about the show, and again, there are so few to pick from because, like, on Metacritic, it has a 79. It's got a very high score from like Hollywood Reporter, New York Times, Collider, AV Club, like every paper, Ebert, they were all on board. Decider, they all say love it, we will watch it. Just a couple, like I think it was Vanity Fair and I think the Arizona Republic were a little negative. But one of the things that I bought into their negativity was in Matt's character in the first episode seems like he is so ambitious and that he has found himself in the perfect opportunity that maybe slowly he'll be able to wear away. And he
Right?
could be, and yes, he's going to find himself in a Larry David position where he'll end up having to take the heat for a lot of mistakes. Episode 2, he kind of creates his own problem. He shows up on set at this one take thing, and then he starts getting in the director's face about every issue and then making more. Like, you would think that the guy would be a little smarter.
Right. I
It
mean,
just
like
seemed like he started playing too dumb in
he
the
was he
second
was, like,
episode.
talking off camera and stuff like that. He kinda turned into the bumbling fool. My problem is I felt like where the first episode, I kind of understood his goal. He's trying to save this company. It just kinda turned, like, mean-spirited, a really mean-spirited humor in this second episode, especially
To who?
against to Matt, because
Oh,
like, he himself was just kinda, like, hated by
I mean,
everyone.
you look at the franchise, remember the guy who came in there, and in the first episode, there was the producer that was supposed to be on their side,
Yeah.
immediately gets fired. And this other producer comes in there, and he's just the antagonist the entire way through. He doesn't care if the movie tanks. All he cares about is money. And so that is what Matt is supposed to sort of try to be, but at the same time, he sneakily loves movies. Just you would think that if that was 100% true in the second one, he just would have shut up and like watched and enjoyed the one shot take. There was no reason to do the thing with the cigarette where he started telling the
The
director
joint,
that
yeah.
they needed to add the joint back in because that didn't even have anything to do with money.
Right.
Like, it maybe if he had been once again told by Cranston's character, you need to do this or else we're going to lose money, and then he felt really bad about it. But what ended up happening was he parks in front of the lot where they meet for the end of the
And
shot.
once they actually finally get the one shot take, they're not able to finish it because the actress can't pull out with the car.
I'm still cracking up when he just walks up to the actress in the middle of the shot thinking that she's just hanging out and starts talking to her, and she's like, "We're in the one shot take right now," because they were so far in at that point. They were at least a couple minutes in. Yeah, so
Overall, I would give the series a 7 out of 10. I think that my least favorite character so far is probably Catherine Hahn. I felt like she played her role a little bit too Kate McKinnon-esque, kind of Kate McKinnon from like Yesterday, overly snarky, mean, and annoying. But overall, I like everyone in this series. Also, just when it comes to the cast, I think it's kind of incredible that they were able to get all of these people.
I think it's cool that having seen, Catherine Hahn what would we say
Agatha,
Agatha so recently, seeing her play sort of a Disney villain, and then now playing an actual, like, smug human villain, and then in that other series that you did with her, where she was, like, kinda playing a broken,
are you talking about
tragic.
Tiny Beautiful Things or
Yeah,
something?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Basically, she just has a lot of range.
Well, I know that also with Seth Rogen, he likes to do a lot of drama as well. So I think
Well, more
everyone,
recently, he has, yeah,
yeah, I
but he
think
started off with
everyone in
just
the
comedy.
series has like a lot of range. But
Ike Barinholtz, have you seen him do a lot of super big drama stuff?
he was in The Hunt, I remember.
That's another comedy. Chase Suey Wonders from Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Yeah, David Krumholtz. Nicholas Stoller is the guy you were talking about earlier with directing Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Get him to the Greek. Wait, he directed Platonic. No wonder they had him on there. So even though he did do The Underpants, he also did Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Get Him to the Greek, Neighbors, Neighbors 2, Bros, Yes Man, Muppets Most Wanted, Friends from College, and Platonic. So
Yeah, so
so he knows him very well. So and they were just making fun of him the whole time. It's the weirdest thing about this is that people don't realize that it's Seth Rogen. Like, how can they? They're clearly going to reference some of his
yeah.
films at some point in the thing. There's so much you can talk about with this series because it's like an endless satire that just looks at the industry as a whole. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of stuff. I know AI is going to be mentioned, how that's affecting the industry. If it had stayed more serious and that second episode had not had him crashing through one of the takes, I know that made you laugh, but would it have made the series better if they tried to take it a more serious route, like The Offer?
Yeah, probably.
Hmm.
Probably.
Because a lot of people didn't like The Offer.
A lot of people did like The Offer, though. It has an 8.7 on IMDb.
Yeah, but then like a lower reception on Rotten
That's
Tomatoes.
the critical reception.
All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Did you know that Seth Rogen has a cannabis his own studio with Evan Goldberg? Like
I did. I
it's called
actually did know that.
Houseplant.
Yeah, I actually did know that.
All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.